Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Rick Howard, and I am honored to present to you on long-term athletic development, why we need it for youth athletes. So I am an associate professor at Westchester University, which is outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the United States. I am also the sports performance coordinator here at Westchester and a visiting professor at Reykjavik University in Iceland. So I am excited to be here to share with you about long-term athletic development. So for today, the objectives we have are to, first of all, identify the 10 pillars of long-term athletic development, which came from a position statement that we wrote with the National Strength and Conditioning Association a number of years ago to let everybody know that all athletes, young and old, are able to improve their skills across the lifespan. One of the ways we can do that is in objective number two, looking at how we differentiate between fundamental and foundational movement skills and the importance of each. The third thing I'm hoping we get from this session is how to integrate principles of strength and conditioning to promote cradle to grave health and well-being for all athletes of all ages. Oftentimes we'll see information about sports science, how to help reduce the risk of injury, how to get athletes to be better, how to get more of our youngsters and adults and older folks involved in physical activity. But quite often it does not include the really important aspect of strength and conditioning. The fourth part is to use things such as strength and conditioning as a solution to improve the youth sports model, increase performance, reduce the risk of injury, and make it fun. So here are the 10 pillars of long-term athletic development from the position statement. I'll point your attention to the top right here, looking at what long-term athletic development is by our definition: chronic development of athleticism over time. So it's not something that happens right away. It's not something that happens when a child turns 9 years old. It's something that takes time. And as you can see from the long-term athletic development pillar number one on the left, it's highly individualized, non-linear. So you'll see kids going through all different phases of growth and maturation at different periods of time. We have to accommodate for that. So we also want to enhance their confidence and competence. So you can see that, like number two, early sampling to promote and enhance a broad range of motor skills. Number three, to give youth all training modes to enhance health and skills related components of fitness. So really helping our kids to get the toolbox they need to be successful, whether they choose to be a competitive athlete, a recreational athlete, do sports on their own time, participate in strength and conditioning or physical activity. It's important that they have the motor skill development and the strength that they need to be able to put that together. The most interesting part, I think, of our pillars is number five on the bottom left, which was to ensure the health and well-being of the child above all else. So wherever they are on their growth continuum, on their interest in sports continuum, it's important for us as practitioners, as sports scientists, and coaches to be able to make sure we're helping to reach kids where they are at that particular level, help them be the best that they can be in all of the endeavors that they choose across the lifespan. So you can see over on the right ways we can do that: enhancing physical fitness from early childhood with the primary focus on motor skill and muscular development. So you can see why that's a big part of what I'm sharing with you today. Have them participate in physical conditioning to reduce the risk of injury. Quite often, we don't see strength and conditioning programs included in sports training programs, especially at younger ages, and it's really important that we do that. And then make sure that we're also looking at their psychosocial well-being at all ages and stages. So here's some thoughts, age and grade level strategies that we might have. This over on the right is called the Youth Physical Development Model. You can see the reference here from Rodri Lloyd and John Oliver. They created this model that really shows that all of these attributes, the FMS is fundamental motor skills, the SSS is sports specific skills. Then you can see the rest: mobility, agility, speed, power, strength, hypertrophy, and then endurance and metabolic conditioning. So all of these attributes are trainable across childhood and adolescence. You can see the darker colors kind of gives you an indication where there might be a little sensitivity to the training, where youngsters will be able to develop these attributes at a higher rate, but they can develop them all across their childhood and adolescent years. So it's important to include these at all stages of development. Over on the left, it shows us for youngsters 6 to 12 years old, for example, focus on that motor skill acquisition. Make sure that they can run, jump, throw, catch, land, change direction, all the things they're going to need to be successful movers across their lifespan. Build their toolbox of strength exercises. It doesn't mean that we're having them do the maximum effort they can do. What it does mean is that we're having them learn how to do different movements, learn a squat pattern, learn how to lunge, learn how to push and pull, all of our foundational movements so that they have that available to them as they grow. So the ages between 12 and 15 years, we're asking them to continue to develop muscle strength. We know that it's mostly a neural response until they hit puberty, but we want to make sure that they understand the movement patterns so that when they go through the growth spurt, when they go through what they call adolescent awkwardness, we can retrain it. It's not that we're trying to train them at this time or trying to wait until after puberty to train these skills. What we want to make sure is once they reach that 14 to 19-year-old area where they might be able to focus on a particular sport or activity, they have the strength they need to be able to do that and to retain those motor skills. So we want to make sure that we retrain motor skills as kids go through the growth spurt, making sure that as they adjust to their bodies and their new sizes, that they could still move with confidence and competence. So what are the fundamental motor skills? Here we have them over on the left. Three categories: locomotion, or also known as locomotor, walking, running, bounding, hopping, all of these. Manipulation skills, catching, pushing, pulling, dribbling, etc. Catching and throwing are actually two of the motor skills that have been credited with leading to lifetime physical activity among youth. So it's important to make sure that kids feel confident and competent in their ability to throw and catch. Stabilization skills, sometimes also called body awareness or body control. Can you turn your body, twist, land? So many of youth sports injuries occur because some of our younger athletes never really learned how to land or how to stop and change direction, how to brace, all of these different things. So it's important to put all of these in. If you're coaching a sport, you might find that some of your athletes are pretty good at these and not so good at others. Include them in your warm-up. You can include some of these as part of your dynamic warm-up within that 8 to 10 minutes before practice to make sure that they're getting all the skills they need. Because as we see over on the right, the physical activity levels internationally appear to peak around age 6, and then it continues to decline. So it's incumbent on us as the experts and the doers in our field to make sure we're helping all young movers move throughout their lifetime by having them learn these skills, become more comfortable in their ability, and doing it from an early point in time to help them move forward. We can see in the third bullet here that modern day youth do not possess the skills and the strength that they need because they're not active enough. So we need to make sure that we're giving them every opportunity to be able to do that. So movement skill competencies, it says here, is related to that long-term engagement. So we want to make sure that we're focusing as early as possible to get kids able to do that, which doesn't mean, as we saw from the previous slide, doesn't mean that if they don't do it early, they won't learn it. It just means, just like for students trying to learn at grade level, the longer it takes them to get to grade level, the longer it takes for them to become proficient. Here's an idea of what we meant by foundational movement skills over on the right. So not only the fundamental movement skills, but other things. You could see cycling, for example, swimming, lunging, squatting. So some of the things that we would do in a gym, treading water, overhead press. So a lot of those other movements that we want everybody to be able to do to be able to move efficiently throughout the lifespan is important to include here on top of the fundamental movement skills. And then over on the left, you could see what happens. There is where the break in the line is over on the left. It's known as the proficiency barrier. So if our kids don't have competent fundamental motor skills, generally by around age 10 to 12, it becomes much more difficult for them to be able to do what they need to do. The example here, so it's over on the left, like the overhand throw. If a youngster around age 10, 11, or 12 can't do this proficiently, once they need to exhibit sport-specific skills, if they can't overhand throw, they're going to have a difficult time if they try to throw a javelin, pitch a baseball, serve a tennis ball, all of these different skills. Same thing with the right, with the two-hand sidearm strike. Right? If they can't do that proficiently, they'll have a hard time playing golf, playing hockey, baseball, all kinds of different sports. So it's really incumbent on letting kids choose what sport they want to play rather than limiting them on what sport they can play, because we never made sure that they had the skills that they needed to develop in order for them to make that choice. So objective 3 was adding resistance training into the mix. And again, it does not mean maximum loads, as we can see here. This is kind of a summary of what we know is recommended for kids for resistance training. So frequency, when they're starting off, twice a week is fine, up to 3 times a week. Intermediate's about the same, but the intensity can increase a little bit. So you can see that 50 to 70% to start, very modest, very moderate. It doesn't have to be a heavy weight. What we really want is to reinforce good technique. It's important to mention that as kids are growing and developing, that technique might not always look the same, and it won't look the same as every other child as they're growing and developing either. So we have to make sure that we accommodate for that. Make sure, as you can see here, that the rest interval doesn't need to be as long as kids get older. As they get more efficient at the movements, they probably don't need the same amount of rest. Right. So on the other part here, it shows that the rest interval actually gets longer as they get stronger, because it's going to take them more time to recover in between each set. So younger kids tend not to need as much time to rest. They're ready to go, go, go. But as they get stronger, they're going to need a little bit more time for their muscles to recover before they do their next set. For the volume, you could see here that it's going to start off to be 1 to 2 sets. So a couple days a week, 1 to 2 sets of maybe 8 to 10 exercises for 10 to 15 repetitions. Then you can increase the number of sets, decrease the number of reps, which you would want to do anyway as you get closer to their level of intensity. So as their intensity goes up, the number of reps is going to go down. Then you can see as they get more advanced, you can do 3 or more sets for 6 to 10 repetitions. The repetition speed generally is moderate. There is some great information out there that shares that we can teach young kids, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, so around 10, 11, 12 years old, how to do the Olympic movements. So you're going to use a light implement like a dowel, just to show them how to do a clean, how to do a jerk, all of the different motions. We can show them. That's going to have the repetition speed be a little bit faster as a power movement, but we also know that it's for that specific movement pattern. Same thing with jumping and hopping. We can have kids do that, which is outside a little bit of the resistance training, but just to make sure we all understand that, yes, those type of movements where we want our athletes to move quickly, and I'm using athletes as an all-encompassing phrase here for everybody who's training, whether they're on a team right now or not, to make sure that if they need to move quickly, they can. All right, so here's a model that has been put forward that seems to make a whole lot of sense. It's called the Athletic Skills Competency Model. So we can look at this, and if you look around the squares, the circles on the right, it shows us what we want to be able to do. So we've already talked about a lot of these for motor skills. If we go all the way to the bottom, jumping, landing, and rebounding. These are important skills no matter what we do. You could be out playing going for a long walk or other things, and you have to get out of the way of an obstacle. You will need those skills. Or for certain sports, you'll need those skills. Going around here to the left and up, throwing, catching, and grasping, we already talked about. Being able to accelerate, move quickly, decelerate, slow down, and then reaccelerate once you slow down, get back up to speed quickly. Lower body unilateral, so using each side, so concentric and eccentric. So things like a lunge where you're using one leg. Then lower body bilateral, both legs together like a squat pattern. Upper body pushing, which is basically moving the resistance away from you. So that would things like a chest press or a push up or a push overhead. And then upper body pulling, moving either yourself toward the object or moving the object toward you. So pull-ups or pull-downs, different things like that would count here. And then anti-rotation and core bracing. So teaching our core how to work in concert with the rest of our body by either having it resist rotating or being able to brace without moving. So these are the important skills that we can include in every program for our youngsters as they grow and develop, and even for older athletes that we're working through, just to make sure they're getting all of the skills and abilities they need to be the best they can possibly be. I have over here the old definition from the American Academy of Pediatrics of what we think athletic preparation is. Preparing the biological, social, physiological, and psychological domains for sport and competition. This is important because we've been talking mostly about the physical, but for some of our athletes, maybe they're not quite up to their age or grade level socially or physiologically or psychologically. So we have to really look at all 4 domains to make sure that the athlete in question actually has the maturity they need physically, socially, and psychologically to be able to make this happen. All right, So what do we mean by athleticism? If you remember way back in the definition of LTAD, we're developing athleticism. Here's how we defined it in the position statement over on the left. You have the ability to repeatedly perform, once isn't enough, a range of movement skills with style, precision, and confidence in a variety of environments, which requires competent levels of strength, power, speed, agility, balance, coordination, and energy. So if you think back to the youth physical development model, all of these attributes were included, and that's important to look at. So we want to make sure that we train all of these for all of our youngsters, whether they're in a sport or not, because what we're really looking at is athleticism. That's ability to feel comfortable, confident in your ability to move. You can see with style, precision, confidence in a variety of environments. So we could look at it on land, in the water, on a field, on a pitch, on a court, all different environments. It could be using different size balls, different textures, moving in different directions. That's really how we develop athleticism. And then we could think in terms of how we're developing athletes. Bill Bowerman, the founder of Nike, said, if you have a body, you're an athlete. We think of athletes only as those elite performers in a particular sport. And yes, they are definitely athletes. They are high-level athletes. But all of us is an athlete in our own context, in our own ability. We might just be beginning athletes in a certain sport. And that's what's really neat about the definition of athleticism. If you're looking at a range of movement skills, you might be proficient in several, but there are a few you might need work on. And we need to contribute and help you to gain those particular movement skills too, so that you have a wide array of movement skills to draw upon anytime you decide that you want to play a sport, play a game, have physical activity, whatever it is, you're ready for it, and you make the choices as to which one you want to participate in. So the fourth objective is solutions. So it's all well, fine, and good, right, to tell everybody what we need to do, but we also want to make sure we give you the tools to move forward and put this together in a way that makes sense. So we need to reduce the emphasis on early sports specialization. By only learning certain movement skills in one sport, we miss out on all the other movement skills of other sports. And by focusing only on those, we tend to overuse those same patterns over and over again. So one good way to do that would be to increase free play. Let kids get out there, play, do what they need to do, have fun. And it's a great way as coaches, parents, and practitioners to observe our kids in motion. What does it look like? How do we help them to move better? So we already talked about health and skill related components. Make sure we do that. Other things, make sure they have general preparation before sports specific practice and competition. So we don't want our kids to play to get in shape. We want them to get in shape to play. So make sure they're physically ready for the rigors and the demands of sport competition. Provide integrative neuromuscular training, which is strength and conditioning combined with fundamental motor skill training, especially for those aspects or attributes that a kid might need help with. So let's say they have difficult time doing a lunge pattern. Help them through fundamental movement skill training neuromuscularly to get that pattern before we start loading it in strength and conditioning. Another important aspect, do it year round. It's not about just certain points during the season. Make sure that strength and conditioning is an important element of every program year round. And then we've looked at the definitions of an athlete or athletic or athleticism, and it's important to let everybody have the chance to become the best they can be. So over on the right, so basically we're saying the same thing. We're just saying make sure it's focused on the athlete, make sure it's developmentally appropriate for the age and stage of each child, give them good feedback so they know how to get better. Make sure you focus on their effort and development rather than the outcome so that they can actually get better. And then maximize athletic potential of all kids at all stages of development. Here are a couple other thoughts for youth sports participation that has come from the research. Basically, you see over on the graph on the left, before around the age of 12, 80% of time for kids should be spent in sports other than the chosen sport. So whatever sport they like, they still need to spend lots more time playing other sports. Then around 13 to 15 age, it becomes about 50-50. So they're having more time in their chosen sport, but still having a variety of other sports. And then generally around, most of the research says somewhere around age 15 or 16, specialization becomes very important. So only 20% of the training is in non-specialized sport and deliberate play. And this is very important also because it helps athletes to hone some of the skills that they might not be getting in their sport, and sometimes it helps to complement their abilities in the one sport that they're training. So you can see over here on the right as well. So for kids under 15, they should have at least 2 to 3 months away from sport-specific training and competition. Kids need time to be kids. They should also play only one team at a time during a specific season. Again, kids need to be kids. The more we're overloading them, we see certain sports where they have kids who might be under 13 and they're playing as many contests as the professionals are, who have gone through all the rigors of training and are able to accommodate those loads, where youngsters are not quite ready for that. All right, so we need to give kids at least a day or two off a week from competitive athletics and training. Make sure they participate in multiple sports throughout the year. And the other recommendation is that however old they are, they shouldn't be participating in a sport any more than that number of hours per week. So if we use our 13-year-old as an example, they shouldn't participate in more than 13 hours of competition, practice, and supplemental conditioning throughout the week. But why do kids play sports? This is important to keep in mind as well. So over on the left, the number one reason kids play sport is to have fun. And then look over on the right. The number one reason why they quit playing a sport, it's not fun. So remember, kids have to be kids. We might think that they need that much rigor and that much training to get better. They don't necessarily think that way. So if we want our kids to continue to play sports, because we're finding that over 70% of kids are dropping out of sports by the time they're 13 years old, that number is trending now down towards 12 or 11 years old, and that's not what we want to see. So taking a look at all of these different factors makes it important for us to recognize that kids want to get exercise. They want to be able to improve skills, challenge themselves, make friends, and then feel that they're a valuable part of a team. So you can see over on the right that if that's not happening, they come up with other reasons. Well, I had an injury. Well, I got to focus on my schoolwork, other things. So we want to make sure that we as coaches and practitioners and parents are giving our kids every opportunity to be their best. So here's a good quote I like to share from John O'Sullivan, who wrote this great book, Changing the Game, talking about how we can really change the face of youth sports by focusing more on kids and allowing them to be kids. Can you imagine your son or daughter doing their math homework at night and you're standing behind them, moaning and groaning every time they forget to carry the one or put the decimal in the wrong place? Eventually they say, I hate math. I don't want to do it. I think if we use the analogy of other school subjects, it really helps to paint the picture of why we need to change the face of youth sports, because we would never think of yelling at our kids for all these other things. And yet, if they're out on the pitch, if they're out on the field, for some reason in sports, we think it's okay to be yelling like that. And it distracts the kids. It makes them not have fun. So we need to figure out how we can do that better. And then, of course, give them all the tools they need to be the best they can possibly be, focusing on muscle strength, focusing on motor skills, focusing on foundational skills, and then giving them the time and ability and feedback to be able to develop those skills so that they improve their athleticism. So I'll leave you with this as well. The best 8-year-old isn't always the best 12-year-old. The best 12-year-old isn't always the best 16-year-old, and the best 16-year-old isn't always the best 21-year-old. We know that according to that first principle, the first pillar of long-term athletic development, kids all develop differently. Not all 8-year-olds are the same, or 10-year-olds. So we need to keep encouraging them to compete. Don't underestimate those kids who are called late bloomers. So physically, socially, psychologically, or environmentally, they might be a little bit behind everybody else. Keep working with them to get better. And for those who mature early, are early maturing kids, don't overwork them. Don't keep putting them into these positions where they feel that they have to keep after it. Let them have fun. Let them be kids. Let them do what they need to be able to do to make that happen. And then here's my contact information. I run a Facebook group for the NSCA on long-term athletic development. We encourage you to sign up for that if you want to see more information. If you're on other social media channels, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram and Twitter. If you're interested there, I'm also on LinkedIn. It's the same thing, at RIHoward41. If you want to message me directly, there's my email here at Westchester University. Happy to continue the conversation, provide any resources you might need, and learn from you, figure out what we can all do to help make everything better that we can do for youth sports. So I really appreciate the opportunity that you've allowed me to have with you here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.